Well, anyway, Stephen, you just let me know, okay?
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure if we're supposed to be speaking, but
That's cool. No, I
yeah,
think
just,
I'm just
I was
waiting.
actually just typing a message in the chat. But yeah, just I guess once we start, then
Looks like
go.
we have an attendee.
Yeah,
Welcome,
go to the
Trevor.
first one, and yeah, and then I'll just tell you, next slide, please.
Sounds good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand.
Okay, guys, you're good to get started if you like.
Okay, welcome everybody. Today we have a Skillshare workshop presentation from Stephen Stamp and Kerry Jayne McMaster. And it's going to be broken up into two segments. One about Boxla Beats, right? And Blackbird Sessions, right, Stephen?
Yeah, Boxla Beat is a lacrosse podcast I've been doing for 8 years, and then Blackbird Sessions. We'll talk about it a little more, but it was that was Kerry's idea, and we do that together. So she's going to jump in for that part.
And we'll see Kerry later. And just to introduce you, Steve, Stephen Stamp is a writer and editor.
You don't call me Steve.
Okay, Stephen is a writer and editor at Inside Lacrosse Indoor, the leading lacrosse website in the world. He is also a play-by-play and color commentator at all levels, including calling games in the National Lacrosse League, at 5 World Championships, and the first ever European Championship. He's the host and producer of Boxla Beats and co-host with Kerry McMaster of Blackbird Sessions. So tell us about your podcast, your lacrosse podcast.
Cool. Yeah, let's we can we get the slides up?
Yes, absolutely.
And that'll guide folks along with what we're doing.
Okay.
All right, so yeah, we're just going to talk about how we create both, and then for Boxla Beat, it is a podcast that I've been doing for 8 years. Started off actually with a girl in the U.S. that I met through some happenstance. She was 14 years old and started a lacrosse website. Pretty amazing. She's now 23, I guess, and writing, leading commentator for the National Women's Hockey League and a variety of other things. And she started something called the Cross Radio Network and asked if I'd like to do a podcast. And I said, sure. So I created Boxla Beat, and we got rolling. I did it for a year. The National Lacrosse League asked me to bring it to their platform, and I did it there for 6 years. And then it was actually on Cheap Seat Sports for its final season to date. We went into hiatus when the pandemic struck because there weren't lacrosse games happening. So it was a big factor. But if we can just switch to the next slide, I want to speak about things that I do to prepare for doing a podcast and how I go about actually undertaking it. And I want to say any questions anyone has throughout, don't wait till the end. We will do a little question period at the end, but if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat room. Zara will let us know, and happy to answer them as we go. We're going to talk about kind of the on and off technical side of things. So we'll start. My big thing to keep in mind is don't be afraid to ask for something that you want. And the best example for me was when I went to Loyalist College for broadcast journalism. It was a while ago now. It was actually about 15 years ago, I guess. I had the opportunity to do a radio show, a radio magazine show. And each week there was a politics, a sports and an entertainment section. The interviews were about 4.5 minutes, and you got to do your own little section. And for the entertainment, you either had to speak to 3 people, or if you had a kind of a major guest, you could just have that guest. And I thought Biff Naked was coming to town, to Belleville, to play a concert. So I was like, I would love to interview Biff for this show. So I followed through. I got in touch with her representation, went through the whole process, set it up. She called in. We wound up talking for about 25 minutes. One of the women I was in school with was super excited. So she actually wanted to answer the phone. So she answered the phone when Biff Naked called, and then put it through to the interview room. And we talked for quite a while. We both do a lot of poetry. So I wound up reciting a poem for her, and she read me a poem from her journals. It was just a lot of fun. Great episode. It was an amazing experience. And I remember one of the people in the class said, "Oh, you're so lucky that you got to interview Biff Naked and do this story." And I said, "Well, yes, I feel fortunate that I got to do it, but also I just asked. I literally just sent an email and said, 'Hey, I would like to do this. Can we do it?' And that's how it happened. And that has always been my approach, is if you want to do something, ask. And if they say no, or if it doesn't work out, you're in the exact same situation as if you didn't ask. You're still not doing it. So do it, and some great things will happen. The next point I've got is finding the right person to talk to for setting up interviews. Or if you can go back to the previous slides, that'd be great. Just hang on here for a bit. Is finding the right person. For Boxla Beat, some teams in the NLL, when I'm doing recordings, interviews, some teams like to have their media person set up the contacts, and they want you to go through them for everything anytime you talk to their players during the season, which is fine. Other teams, especially with people I've got a really solid relationship established with their media person, they know that I see these guys at rinks all the time. I have people's phone numbers. I talk to guys all the time. They're like, "Yeah, go ahead. Thanks for letting us know. Just go ahead and call whoever it is you want to speak to, and just let us know. Tag us on Twitter or whatever. Let us know when you've got it done." So that's important to find those people, though, and know how to do it, because you can really block your access to very interesting interviews that could happen for you if you don't find the right way. You can lose that chance. So tackling the tough questions and issues and asking the tough questions, I think, is really important. And it's something obviously Aisha and Will do with Peter Currents, and I think it really can make a difference. I mean, not every interview is going to be hard hitting, getting to the hidden nuggets, but I mean, I had a guy for Boxla Beat who came out about his issues with substance abuse and going to rehab, and how it had basically tanked his career, and he was trying to make a comeback, and he was in the Arena Lacrosse League, and we had a great conversation where he was very open about things, and it was very moving. And and you got to ask the questions. That's what's really going to hit home with your audience. The other big item I find is find a system that works for you. For me, I like to do topic outlines. I like to have point form of what I want to discuss with a guest, where I want to go. Because there's a lot of lacrosse stuff for me, there'll be statistics and things, and I will touch on those, but I'll have those on the sheet that I want to talk about. Little questions, but I'm not big on scripting questions, but for a lot of people, they really like to have scripted questions. I would just say, if you're going to have scripted questions, a couple of things. One is, you've got to get comfortable with reading the questions, or getting comfortable enough to say the questions without it sounding like you're reading them. Because it's not, we've all seen people who do read questions where you can see them following along, and it's just not comfortable. It doesn't create a connection with the listeners. So I think for me, that's why I like to have points, and the question kind of comes out as I'm looking at it. The other big question, and I see we've got one coming, I want to get to that in just a sec, but the one last thing I'll mention on this slide is to go with the flow. We call them interviews. I always say, I want to set up an interview, but to me, they should be conversations. If they're going to be interesting, they should be conversations. And I think that is really critical, that you're engaging and interesting. I've had people call me up and say, "I can't believe you got Derek Keenan to tell you all that stuff that I didn't think you would talk to someone about." And I said, "Well, we talk all the time. We've got a good relationship." And I think it's important to make sure that you're comfortable, your guest is comfortable. I'm actually looking at the question right in the chat room. When you're approaching a guest, what sort of information to give them about the show? Do you ever go over what you're going to talk about with the guest ahead of time? And sorry, if you want to switch to the next slide, I'll go ahead and answer that while we do it. And the big thing in terms of information about the show for Boxla Beat, I mean, most of the people in lacrosse know the podcast, so I don't have to tell them too much. I just say, hey, I want to have you on Boxla Beat, my podcast. Can we do a call Monday? And that's usually enough. There are times when you need to explain a bit more, but most people are pretty cool. Honestly, a lot of people, just you say you want them on your podcast, they don't ask a lot of information. But I think because a lot of people just are, in lacrosse are really just helpful and really friendly and ready to do it. And a lot of people just love the chance to be on your podcast. The other thing about going over what we're going to talk about, I definitely, I mean, for a lot of guests with lacrosse guys, it's just like, we're going to talk about what happened on the weekend. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about what's coming up. It doesn't need to be laid out, but sometimes, I mean, certainly with Joel Matthews, the guy that I had on talking about his substance issues, I said, what are you comfortable talking about? And I mean, his answer was pretty, he basically said, whatever you want to talk about, I'm open. But yeah, I would say it's most important if you have any sensitive issues to make sure that they know. Like there are times I say, hey, I'm going to ask you about this. I'm not going to pull the punches. So I think giving them an idea of what's going on is pretty important when you're getting ready to roll. Okay, so the tech side for Boxla Beat, it doesn't have to be fancy when you're doing a podcast. You want to find something that produces suitable quality for the podcast that you're doing. So for me, honestly, a lot of times it's been my phone, and I will call someone up and I will put it on speaker. I use GarageBand to record the podcast and to edit and everything. So I'll just get GarageBand on, start recording, and make the call and say, okay, I'm going to record. And I start recording, and I put the phone on speaker. And because it's a matter of figuring out what works for you, I find the computer tends to pick up my voice quite strongly, it's usually louder than whoever's on the phone. I'll try and turn them to a volume that seems like it'll work, but I usually hold the phone between me and the computer so that their voice, and kind of hold the speaker towards the microphone in the computer so that they will get picked up well. And then, that reduces the amount of volume editing that I've got to do later. Another factor another thing that I've used quite a bit is Uber Conference. People always, when I first started using it, people would always ask me if it was literally a taxi thing. I'm like, no, it's just a conference calling. It's a free conference calling software. They've actually added, I haven't used it for about a year because very much for about a year because I haven't been doing my podcast, but they've changed some things. They've added video, which is pretty cool. It's still free. There is a pro version or elite version, whatever they call it, that you can upgrade to. Which, depending on what your needs are, might be worthwhile. But I've always done it with free Uber Conference. You just literally call in, and you go on to Uber Conference. I've put the link there, and you literally just have to go and set up a conference, invite anyone you want. It will send them an email, give them the call-in information. They can go on their computer or they can phone in, and excuse me, they just call when the conference is set for. And it works out really quite well. It worked out great at first. The one thing I have found with Uber conferences, eventually it seemed to change a bit, and the volumes were a bit different. The levels were a little bit different for me and the person on the other end, which I don't know why that started happening, but that creates a lot of editing. Because honestly, if their level is consistently lower, then you've got a lot of sound editing to do in post-pro. So that's not ideal. That was actually why I kind of went back to doing some from my phone, because I honestly got pretty good quality. The other one that a friend of mine is using, I've just joined up and haven't had a chance to actually use it yet, but I've taken a look, is Zencaster. And I believe that our fearless leader, Aisha Barmania, uses Zencaster as well. And it's pretty cool. Hey, she showed up. Hello. Yeah, and Zencaster, it looks like the person, my friend that does another lacrosse podcast told me it's been great for him. So lots of positives. And the nice thing, we'll do a little bit of a tech run on the Blackbird Sessions side of things. But the nice thing with Uber Conference, and I believe with Zencaster as well, is you record the conference, and then when you end the session, it sends you a summary. You get emailed a summary, and you can just download an MP3 of the call, and then you literally drag and drop it into GarageBand or into Audacity or Reaper, or whatever it is that you use. So it's very simple, and then you're into editing. So I like that for Boxla Beat because it is a very conversation-based podcast. There's not a lot of other technical sides. There's not a lot of music and things. I just have my intro music. And Zara, anytime you have anything you want to chip in, feel free to jump in as well, right? And I want to now actually just play a quick clip of Boxla Beat, and this is from the last season, season 8, with Austin Stotts, who's a star player. He was a rookie with the San Diego Seals. He was the first overall pick in the National Lacrosse League draft. And his brother, he talks about, is Randy Stotts. They're both on the Iroquois Nationals team that won a silver medal at the World Championships in the fall of 2019. They're both among the best lacrosse players on the planet. And they're from Six Nations, which is not a huge community over in Six Nations of the Grand River near Brantford. But we talked a little bit about his background there.
Where you're from in Six Nations is almost taken a step further. You see people at six, but you also see, I find a lot of lacrosse nets. Like you'll go by houses and there's a house with a net in the front yard. There's one with a net in the backyard. It seems like another level up in terms of the connection to the game from Peterborough and some of the other hotbeds.
It definitely is a hotbed, right? I mean, as soon as the summer ends, pick up our hockey sticks, and most people don't even have a hockey net in their backyard. We just normally use our lacrosse set to shoot around, even like playing hockey. But I mean, like you said, just nets everywhere, like every corner, every backyard, or every front yard, whatever. I mean, I remember as a kid, me and my brother would be outside, trying not to miss because we'd have to go find it in the field, right? And if we took our eye off the ball, we'd lose the ball, and we have to go inside and not have the ball. So I mean, I think that's what really helped me and my brother become so dynamic at the game of learning how to shoot, like just on an empty net, and just making sure you didn't miss your shot because no one likes to go looking for a ball, right? So I mean,
I stopped sharing my screen there so you could share your Instagram as well if any of our attendees would like to follow the page.
Cool. Yeah, it's and it's on the it is on the, I believe, on the page, the Instagram. It's just at Boxla Beat on Instagram, and yeah, there are 8. That was just for the last season. We put them on Instagram, so there are the episodes that were done last
You're
season.
from Six Nations.
Oh, I started it up again. There we go. We'll just pause. And the earlier ones are on iTunes, formerly Apple Podcasts. They're on. We listen to a lot of podcasts through Castbox, which is an app, and it's pretty excellent. And you can basically find it. It's on SoundCloud, the older episodes, so you can find Boxla Beat basically anywhere that you look for your podcasts. And I'd love a follow. It's great to obviously have followers, and nice to let people know when new episodes are coming out, which hopefully will be relatively soon. Kind of waiting for things to get rolling again, but that's going to be happening. So yeah, so if we can skip ahead to one more back one. There we go. Perfect. Thanks. Nope. Yeah, there we go. I want to go over a few things that I think are important when you're doing your podcast, because it's so easy. I am reminding people of some of these because I don't always do them perfectly. And I know when if I listen back to see what I think I can do better, one of the things is always like, say who you are, say who your guest is, say what the podcast is. So introduce yourself and your guest. I'm very good at doing that at the beginning of the show and at the end of the show, introducing them, giving them a little heads up on who they are and things. And at the end, thanking the guests. During the middle of a show, I tend to forget. to repeat who I am and who they are. And it's important. And you hear people, the good podcasters, like good radio folks, say during the show, I am Stephen Stamp. My guest today is Austin Stotts or Zara Syed or whoever it is. And that's important to let people know, because I know I've listened to podcasts before where I'm going along, I'm like, oh, I forget who this person was, because you're new to the podcast. Obviously, your loyal listeners are going to know and have a pretty good, solid understanding, but you have to develop loyal listeners, right? You've got to find that loyalty and you want to have that name recognition. So I think mentioning the name of the podcast actually has my third point here, but just because someone's listening to your podcast doesn't mean that it's stuck in their head. You want to get some front of mind recognition. You want to, maybe they've just joined in for the first time and they're 10 minutes in, they've already forgotten the name because you just said it at the beginning. So repeat the name of the podcast. It doesn't have to be incessant. It shouldn't be incessant, but I think it's important to let them know what this show is so they can go and subscribe, so they can come back regularly. And the other big thing, the middle point on this, among these bullet points, is to really listen to what your guest is saying. I mentioned that I like to have notes. I like to have a pretty concise script so I can just wander around and go with the flow. But even if you have your script pretty laid out, if you have it, so that this is the way I'm going to flow through the whole thing, this question, then this question, you have to listen to what the guests are saying. And it's really a question. It's basic conversation skills, right? Don't just wait for them to be done so you can ask your next question. I've heard, and I've been a guest on podcasts where that's happening. And it kind of feels like it doesn't matter what you say as a guest. And I'm sure there's a feeling like that for the listeners as well. So my thing is, go down the rabbit hole. If somebody says something interesting, if it's interesting to you, it's going to be interesting to the people listening to your podcast. And it's usually worth your time to just follow up, let them go, let the conversation lead you where it's going to go. So that to me is a huge factor. And in terms of the show itself, I mean, I mentioned that I've been doing Boxla Beat for 8 years, and it's fun the way that things have changed over the years. It started out, as I said, Marissa and Jemmy asked me to come and do a show. And I said, great. So I started doing it, and I'd record it. I think I started off just recording it at home. And it was a live show at first. So people would call in. We did it on, I can't even remember. It was Blog Talk Radio, I think. It's a platform that may not even be around anymore. Certainly it's changed substantially if it is. And it would be a live show. So it would be a certain time of every week, and I'd have to get the guests to call in. There were a couple of times where they didn't call in which case you have to be thinking on your feet and just be ready to talk for the length of your show about whatever, that player or whatever. Usually they were pretty good. It was interesting. I had John Grant Jr., who's a huge name in lacrosse. He's from Peterborough, and had him on. And then I saw him, and he and another guy, Tracy Koleski, another Hall of Famer in lacrosse, they owned the Montreal House, which is now Dr. J's barbecue, I think. But anyway, they owned the Montreal House, and John Grant said, wow, Stamper, I can't believe I was on that podcast. All these people have been mentioning it, have been talking to me about it. So he said, do you want to come and do it at the Moho? I was like, sure. So they would give me dinner and a drink, and I would come in and hang out and prepare, and then people would call in and I'd do the show, and it was pretty fun. Now, when we switched the following year to the NLL podcast platform, I didn't do it live anymore, which bit of a break, honestly. I was able to record it, and so I just do the recordings, edit it together, get my theme music in, put the recordings in, be able to manage the sound and everything, and then drop it every week with the NLL podcast. And it's maintained a certain consistency of format through the years where I'll have the intro, got my theme music. My theme music, I have to give a shout out to Scotty Comer. He was a goalie in lacrosse, might still play a little bit, and he's a power pop punk musician and producer. He headed a band called Love You to Death, and I said, I'd love to have some of your music for for my intro, and he actually clipped a section of a song for me that was perfect for the opening, about 22 seconds or 25 seconds, that is the opening and closing theme for the show. So it was just perfect, and I've kept that throughout the entire length of the show. And I actually take an 8-second clip of it, or a 6-second clip that I edited down, that I put in between sections of the podcast. So when I'm done with the guest, it just blasts the love you to death music for a few seconds, and then we go on to the next. So I think that is something I didn't mention that's important, is to have very clear sections if you're going to have different guests, to really make a break between them. And over the years, I've stuck with the format of either having one longer guest interview, or two that are split up in the middle. The last year I was doing, actually it evolved a bit, and I changed it up and had sections on different things. The Arena Lacrosse League would be one. Sometimes I'd talk about some international lacrosse, because I have been, Zara mentioned in the opening, I went to Finland for the first European Box Lacrosse Championship, which was really fun. I've been to Prague a couple of times for a tournament over there. And it's really cool to get some of the international folks involved. I had one where I did women fans of lacrosse, and what it's like to be a woman fan, the things that you face, the things that people say, and just how they got into it, because the demographic is shifting more towards women, but it was largely a demographic of men watching the sport, but it really shifted as the league, I think, became, as the NLL and lacrosse in general gained a bit more visibility. But a lot of women watching lacrosse would get kind of negative reactions from men, which I didn't understand. I don't know why that would be, but they did. So we talked about it, and we talked about how they got into it. And it was so fun, because I had one guest in Seattle. I had one guest in Australia. I had one guest in Ontario. And we all had this really fun and interesting conversation. And it was one of my favorite episodes of the show, was being able to have people from all around the world coming in and talking. But I did add some different sections. I would do like a recap of the week before. I would do a preview of what was coming up in the NLL. So it has changed a bit over the years. And who knows exactly what it'll be like when we start up again with Boxla Beat. Okay, if we can flip the slide, I think we are ready. Unless there are more questions anyone has about Boxla Beat. I'm sure I've missed some things that I would have liked to have added, but we are going to move on to talking about Blackbird Sessions. And Kerry Jayne McMaster is going to slide in. She's been sitting here very patiently, listening to me ramble on.
All right, Kerry Jayne McMaster.
Hello.
Hello. I'm just going to introduce you quickly here. Kerry Jayne is a singer-songwriter who has put out 2 albums, the first created in Victoria, and the latest, Romance of Many Dimensions, was produced here in Peterborough. You are the owner of Revive Hair Lounge and co-host with Stephen Stamp of Blackbird Sessions. So tell us, why was it so important for you to make a podcast profiling local musicians?
Peterborough has been fantastic for me, and the arts community is just so welcoming, and all the musicians I've met through Stephen and just in the town, and getting to play at wonderful venues that unfortunately some are no longer there, like the Spill and Catalina. But I guess basically I wanted to give back to the community. I had this idea that it would be a neat way to reach other musicians and to value their work. That was one thing that was really important. And we were able to connect with a pub that would actually pay our guests to play. So our idea was to have a podcast that paired with a live show, and the artists would get paid for their set. So
because we basically, it was pretty important to us to value the time and the talent of our guests on this show, and we had no way to pay them from our podcast revenue, because our podcast revenue has been zero. So there would have been a pretty big percentage, well, an infinite percentage of our podcast revenue. So so by joining and by partnering with it was with Next Door Pub at the time, And it was great because they would bring the musician in. So we'd record the podcast. We actually recorded some of them at Next Door Pub.
Yeah.
We recorded some at Revive Hair Lounge. And
Because of the bar fridge.
yeah. You want to get into that right now? Let's do it. When we first started recording it, the first session, the first podcast of it was called The Musician Next Door at the time because it was at Next Door Pub. And we go to record, and I'm setting the sound levels, and there's this hum. And I'm going to get to one of the very important elements of recording. But I've got my earbuds in, and I'm listening, and there's this hum coming in on the recording that we weren't hearing ourselves. And we're checking, we're trying to figure out what it was. We turned off the ceiling fans. It didn't help. We're doing all these things. And finally, we're like, it seems like it's coming from over here. Turns out it was the beer fridge or the bar fridge that had a very noticeable hum. And so we got them to unplug it they actually had to go through to the other bar Spankies that it's connected to. And they had to go and unplug it on where the cord goes in. And of course, we had to, like, once the podcast was over, we had to get it plugged back in because we can't let the drinks get cold or get warm. So there are all kinds of challenges that you run into. But it was really important to us that we value their time and pay the musicians. So, the pub would pay them for coming in and doing the performance. And we would record the podcast, and I would edit and get it ready to drop. We'd put it up on PIP on the website, and we would, because this is Blackbird Sessions, Musician Next Door is a PIP podcast, and we're very proud to be part of Peterborough Independent Podcasters. We love the community, and we would drop was it a week or 2 weeks after, or before we dropped the podcast? Then the live performance would be a week or two later.
Yes, that's right.
Remember?
Yeah, it was about 2 weeks apart. Yeah,
So,
they varied sometimes because we had to.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Next Door closed.
Yeah, that was
Wow.
sad. I mean, everyone's getting hurt right now.
Yeah, obviously, pandemic's tough on everybody.
But that was before the pandemic.
It was. That was
And-
before the pandemic.
And then we ended up talking with Desmond at the Black Horse
Mhm.
and sort of had a wonderful conversation with him. And then the pandemic came.
Yeah.
So
Carrie had played at the Black Horse. She had actually, with the previous owner, she had a regular monthly gig or bi-weekly?
it was every 2 weeks.
Yeah, she had a regular gig at the Black Horse on Tuesday nights. I don't know why I'm talking about this. It was a lot.
It was a lot for me. It
real
was
challenging, right?
wonderful to try. Like it was really great to be a part of for sure.
Yeah, so she knew the location, the venue, and the people there, and then when Desmond took over, she performed a couple of times, and we approached him about doing the podcast there, the live portion of it, and he loved the idea and said, yeah, we'll bring him in, and we were just going to get rolling, and boom, COVID shut it down. Because our last episode was last January or February, or we finished in the winter, like November, December, and we're going to start up in the spring, and just didn't. So that was a bit of a shame, but we really appreciate it. It's funny, some of our guests, I mean, some of the more seasoned musicians are like, oh, okay, cool, I'm gonna get paid. That's normal. They know they should get paid, and it's important. But some of the musicians honestly have been like, they're paying me? Oh, that's great. I'm gonna get paid. They're so excited, and I think that speaks more to how we undervalue artists, but it is really nice.
Yeah.
Question for you. Shall I read it to you?
What is it?
It says, Kerry, how has the experience been learning podcasting and interviewing skills? Because I've been doing this for 8 years. You were a newbie. Kerry had the idea for this show, but was new to the whole thing.
I'm a great. I can get up on stage, I can sing, but technical stuff, that's not something I'm really good at all. But it was fun to learn, and I admire Steven. He always does these wonderful broadcasts, and I love Boxla Beat. I just love the hub in the house when he's getting it all together, and he does other things too with regards to broadcasting as well, with announcing and whatnot. So I've been around it a lot. I've seen it, and definitely it was a learning curve for sure. Like getting the mics and the sound isn't happening and this isn't happening, and what plug is going where, and you're just like, it's not working.
And I'm supposed to be the calm one who can do all that, and I'm freaking out because we can't record anything.
That's right. And that was, yeah, because we actually had, because we were recording musicians off the floor, right? So that was a whole other dynamic in the recording process for sure. Oh, okay. And so, but yes, it has been a learning, for sure, a learning curve, and getting comfortable with asking questions. That was new. Like, cause you just, I know a lot of our first guests were people I know in the music world here in Peterborough. And it was really fun to ask them questions and learn a little bit more about their dreams, a little bit more about their past, that kind of a thing. And it was nice that there were people that I was comfortable with too, a lot of them, for me being the first time interviewing. And learning how to go with the flow when there's two people asking questions. Stephen and I would have our own questions set up and do a little research individually on the artists and then collaborate together. And so it usually flowed pretty good, but learning how to go down as you mentioned, the rabbit hole, right? Like following the conversation can be really interesting. I have to try sometimes to not ask the same questions. I would say that's something
of each artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to just be like, what's your process when you're writing? Which is a valid question, and we will talk about it to some extent, probably with everyone. But
just having it a little bit different. Yeah.
The other thing I know for both of us was it would be very easy, because I've been podcasting for a long time and because I've been announcing for a long time and I'm more comfortable with it, or was more comfortable with it. It would be easy and Kerry was sometimes nervous about things. And I'd say, oh, do you want to introduce this part, or do you want me to do it? And she'd say, oh, you go ahead and do that, because she was a little shy about kind of jumping in on the first couple, I think. Yeah. And to me, it was, I think, really important that Kerry's voice that we be equal partners in the show. That it was, if anything, it's more her show than mine, but it's our show. And I didn't want it to seem like my show. So I've kind of pushed her to be like, no, you do this section, or you do this part. And she's so good. I mean, she's got such a wonderful voice as a singer and as a speaker. And I'm her biggest fan. We are engaged. For anyone who doesn't know, we are we're together here. We're at our home. This is our home office. So
and on that note, like, Kerry, do you have any tips for someone who might be nervous about interviewing at all?
Well, I would say certainly if you're on your own doing a podcast, I would recommend networking and maybe meeting other people that do it, that have experience. Because I really do think that working with Stephen and his because he had Boxla Beat for several years, or 8 years or more, it helped me not be so nervous. The other thing too is do your homework. Like, try to have an idea of your guest before you start talking, because that's important too. And I'm always growing with that too. I think at first I just sort of looked a little bit, and then now I would say then after a couple I got into looking a little deeper and trying to challenge a little bit more about how I would approach them. And and then learning. I guess there was a couple times we kind of were hurried and we had to do it. So that's another thing I learned too. Was,
what do you mean?
Well, like we had to less time to prepare.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that was interesting too.
I think one of the things that I thought Kerry really developed in. And I could see her getting more and more comfortable, was the sense of, doing the preparation, knowing what you want to talk about, knowing the background of the performer and some of the things you want to touch on, and asking about them in a way that you're not kind of answering your own question. You don't want to, you want to almost do the preparation, but almost act when you're asking the question as though you haven't prepared to the extent that you have.
Right,
like,
right.
Don't talk about, hey, you've done this and this and this.
That's
Just say,
true.
hey, you used to play in St. John's, where you grew up, right? Can you tell us about that a bit, and not be sharing their story for them.
Exactly. Yeah, you want them to definitely be answering for sure.
I want to talk a bit about the format of Blackbird Sessions. formerly Musician Next Door. And it's very much, we do 5 parts in this, in the podcast. We open up with, we introduce ourselves and the guest, and we talk a bit and have a chat and kind of lead up to playing a recorded song. So a song from one of their albums or that they've got on YouTube, wherever it is that they publish their music, and have a recorded song. So you get really get a feel for what their art is like, what their music's like, in the final finished form that they generally want you to hear it.
Yeah.
We talk a little bit more. We can go back to that, right?
Yeah.
And lead into a live song, and then we record them live performing a song. We're going to talk about the challenges of that in the next section in a little bit, and then we wrap up with a kind of a closing comment. And it's really fun. It involves a little bit of shifting the gear and stuff. One thing we were tempted, I would say, with the format. Remember we talked about going, like, doing the first part, then the recorded song. We just drop in the post pro. We just decide, we agree with them. They send us an MP3. I just drop it in. So we literally just close the first section. Everyone has a drink of water. Start the next section, and then we thought about doing the final section and then changing the setup and recording the live song. Right? Because that way we'd only have to change the microphone setup and everything and make sure the lines were good once. But it doesn't make sense. You want to be able to refer back to the way they played the song, to anything you got new out of the song. For the Lindsay Barr one, we're going to play you a bit of it in a few seconds. She'd never, the song wasn't even recorded. It wasn't out anywhere. She was still working on getting ready to go. So it was a debut. Nobody had heard it. So we hadn't heard it. So we were able to react to this song that she just that she broke out.
And that's the one we did at the lounge at Revive. Mm-hmm. So they had the lovely acoustics as well, which I think I brought it out more so than the Next Door. But I do everything at the Next Door turned out lovely too.
Yeah, that's good. We've talked a bit about the next point, that we were blending experience with me having done it, and Kerry, who had the idea. She's a musician. She's a great musician, by the way. Seriously, just come to the salon if you want to get her albums. We have them both there. The first one is Wheels of the Grand. The second one is Romance of Main Dimensions. Terrific musician. She plays guitar and sings, does all the writing. She has one cover on her last album of what's her name? Gillian Welch song. And Gillian Welch is very good, but I may be a little biased. I think Kerry does an even better version of Wayside. And, I think the beauty of that is that she brought that enthusiasm. The passion was her idea. And I don't know, I think it made a nice mix.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. We're going to get back to it. We will get back to it. Just a little point. It was called Musician Next Door, as we said, because it was at Next Door Pub. When that closed, we looked for a new place, and we didn't want to be tied anymore, because there was an earlier venue that was going to happen. We'd been speaking to people at the venue, and it was going to be great. They were going to contribute some sponsorship money, so it was going to look really good. And then they didn't exactly ghost us. They just kind of trickled away.
Yeah, it was kind of, we tried for several months. Yeah,
and we just finally were like, we want to get this going. We've got to give up on them. We got to go. And the original name was going to be tied to that venue. So we thought, and then we did it with Musician Next Door, because it was so cool. Like, it's the person next door, the girl next door, whatever. Like, just bringing the musician home and feeling like you're just in an intimate conversation with them. We thought the name worked.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to be tied to a location in case we do have to move at some point. We hope we won't. We love the Black Horse Pub. We've always enjoyed the place. Desmond's great. We hope it can stay there, but who knows? You don't know. I mean, the pandemic's a perfect example. So how did we come up with the name Blackbird Sessions?
Okay, well,
it's not just because Kerry has a song called Red Wing Blackbird, which is a great song. That we don't think we even thought about.
Well, okay. Well, the whole part of the idea of this whole podcast is I wanted to explore songwriting. And there's a place it's in Nashville. So it's in Nashville. It's called the Bluebird Cafe, and it's known for its songwriting. They do singer songs in the round, so they have several, or say 3 or 4 artists together, and they will talk about a song and then they'll sing it. And it's very revered place now, and many famous artists have played there, like John Prine. I think Taylor Swift, it's very country, which is something I'm not necessarily a huge fan of. I enjoy some country, but I wanted it to have the element of that songwriting, like really focusing on the craft of the art of writing. And so that was sort of where I think sort of it accidentally happened, the Blackbird Sessions. Yeah, it's kind of, I liked it because it kind of reminded me of it.
Yeah. And because we were going to the Black Horse pub, we had kind of black in our heads, and then there's the bluebirds and the black.
The picture, remember the cover?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was we found a cool photo that was really cool too.
That looked pretty neat. So, yeah, it's fun. We actually did we host some events in Peterborough, music and some poetry. I have my background is in poetry as well. So
he's an amazing poet. I wrote a song with one of his poems.
That was so fun. Kerry asked if she could use one of my poems for a song. I said, you can use any of my poems for a song anytime you want. And she had one that she really wanted to use that hasn't quite worked out yet.
I'm still going to do it.
It's going to work. But then she found another one and actually created a song that's on Romance of Main Dimensions.
It was like
Autumn 1994. No, go.
It was like, I had this idea. I was working on this one song of his, or one poem of his for a song. We were kind of like Sheryl Crow vibe, like, what was that song she does?
Oh my God. All I Want to Do.
All I Want to Do. So that's after a poem, right? Which I didn't know, but anyway, so I'm working on what's the title of your poem?
Autumn 1994. Oh, Saturday Night at the Union Hall.
Saturday Night at the Union Hall. And it's just got this cool kind of vibe to it. And I had this sort of melody I was working on, and I kept trying to make it fit or whatever. And I got frustrated. And I'm like, oh, here's like these 3 other poems of his I really wanted to work on. And I pick up this one, and it was like literally like fit like a glove. Like it was just like, something in the universe this is happening outside of me. This is actually working amazing. And it's evolved a bit, and it's really good.
And we have done other things, and we've hosted a few International Women's Days events.
I love doing that.
Yeah, we've done Music for Mental Health for several years in a row. We didn't do it last fall. We're hoping we can do it again this fall. Maybe it'll be virtual.
Soon,
yeah, maybe. We'll see. Or Facebook Live. We'll figure it out. But we've raised about $5,000 for CMHA and some other mental health initiatives. So we were really into that. And we did something. We hosted for a little while. The songwriter Syzygy. Kerry talked to it. There's the songwriters in the room. Oh, Millie's up. Her dog just came into the room. Because they always talk about musicians in the round, but they were really in a straight line. It was at the Spill. Right. We started. They were in straight lines, so I thought it's a Syzygy. There's 3 of them. It was Kerry and Missy Knott.
Yep.
And was
Hillary
Dumoulin.
Yeah.
And we had some guests. So that was really fun. So we've done a bunch of things. And I think that songwriter Syzygy kind of led to the podcast.
I think so. I think that definitely did.
Yeah. If we can go to the next slide, Zara, that'd be great. And we are going to play. We have it. So I'm going to actually start sharing
How do you do that?
for a moment. I just go like this.
Right.
And Zara, I'll get back to you sharing in a moment. But I want to go to Musician Next Door site on the on Peterborough Independent Podcasters, and we've got it loaded up. And this is from the Lindsay Barr Musician Next Door, the final one that we've done to date. And we were talking about a video that she was working on, but it wasn't out yet. And then she's going to play a bit of Shadow. And the key about this, we're going to talk about the technical side next. And one of the things we mentioned was we have to switch from the microphones to set up for the to record the live song, which is a bit of a challenge you want to make. So we do a little sound check once we do it. Usually before the episode, we do a bit of sound check, and then we do another one just when we're switching from conversation to performance. So here's a bit of the conversation leading up to it, and then a little bit of her performing Shadow. You just go and watch the brand new video of I Don't Dance by Lindsay Barr. We're going to shift to a little different song for our live song. You want to follow up with something?
I did, but we can wait. We can
after?
Yeah.
Will it work still?
Yeah, it will.
Okay, keep that on mind, Kerry Jayne. And we are going to go to a live performance of a new song called Shadow. Not even recorded. This is going to be groundbreaking here on Musician Next Door.
I love your shadow when you walk. I love the words that you choose when you talk. I love to hear you say, stay with me every minute, every day. And I say, oh yeah, oh yeah, ah.
So that is now Blackbird Sessions, the musician next door, and that was Lindsay. And I'm going to stop sharing and let Zara take over again. And
Now we show them.
yeah, and we want to go to the tech side of it, and it'll be fairly quick. But basically, the big difference for us is that instead of, with Boxla Beat, I would just be recording from my phone or from Uber Conference, but we would have to set up. So the first thing we did, I actually was gifted some microphones, 2 of the cigar mics and 1 of the broader mics. This is more multi-directional, and that's a bit more direct. So I got those, and we found we had to be able to use them. We needed to get an interface. So we have this USB Dual Pro interface. It's pretty simple. You literally just plug the microphone into the back. So it's not
You have to lift it up, I think.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. There we go. So it just goes in just like that, straight into the back, and the microphone goes in the other end. But first we would have a stand.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So you pass it through the stand, squeeze there. Yep. And then just plug it in to the back end. And you got it? Sorry, I'm moving it on you, making it tricky. There we go. And you just set that up we would set that up in front of the musician because there's just one of them. And we would set usually the other mic up in front of us because with the multi-directional, it would pick up both of us. So then the other cord just plugs in. Sorry, I have to go higher. Plugs into the back, the other side, and it's just got a USB port, a USB cord that goes into the USB port on your computer, and then you can go directly into GarageBand. The one important thing that would mess us up, you have to turn on right here. There's a phantom power switch. Let's turn off the screen sharing, and we're going to hold the mics up again just so you can see those. So here is that mic, and here is this one. And these, actually, you can still get these mics, but they're black now. I don't know why they changed, but these are nice, solid mics.
They're great.
You don't always need big, fancy mics. I know there are lots of different things you can get. Just find something that works for you. And, the interface, as I mentioned, this going to your computer, and this goes to the mic. And make sure you have the phantom power on. If you don't, nothing will work. And we found that out a couple times. It'll light up when you plug it in to the computer. There's also a button for the gain. You need to turn that on so you can control your gain, which is basically the volume you're going to record at. And I find with this, we do tend to need to have the gain pretty high. Sorry, the gain is on this side. So here are the gain buttons. So these are the levels for the monitor, and the mix. The other thing I mentioned, the headphones. You need to have a set of headphones. Just simple earbuds will do. These are not expensive earbuds. You can have your over-the-head earphones, whatever, but these will do the trick. Something, but there is a port. You need to put the headphones in. That is how you can monitor what you're recording. You won't hear it through the computer when you're going through GarageBand, which we're going to go over in a couple of minutes. So that's a very important step to make sure that is there. And I'm actually going to start screen sharing now and go to GarageBand and just show a couple of things that I've found are pretty important when I've been editing the podcasts. And Kerry and I did a little Uber conference earlier today and just put it in. Just literally, you do Uber conference and it sends you get an MP3, you drag and drop, and we go in and it will say,
This call is being recorded.
You don't want that on your recording, so you can shorten it. You can just you see the little tool pops up at the top there, and you can literally just drag the beginning. You can do this at the end as well, and it is gone. Now the recording starts at me saying hello. Hey, I am Stephen Stamp.
I am Kerry Jayne McMaster.
And we are the host of, and the first thing that comes up, of course, is that I am louder than Kerry. And that's not too surprising. I'm kind of loud and Kerry's not that loud. So you can just put a point in. Now, you need to make sure that you have this right here configured. It's enable automation. You can also do it at the top. There's a way that you can go in and where to go, edit, automation edit. So you have to have that. That has to be blue. And then you literally just click wherever you want to make an adjustment.
You have to do 2 dots.
You have to do 2 dots so that you can lift it. So if I don't do a second dot, if I get rid of that dot and I raise this, it raises the level line, but it stays raised for the rest of the way. So I want to be able to go back because I want to have me back at the normal level. But here I can just raise Kerry. And now, hey, I am Stephen Stamp.
I am Kerry Jayne McMaster.
And we are the host of the levels are much more even. Now, you have to go through and do that. You want to get your levels in pre-pro in recording to be as close as you can. So we would check that when we're doing a recording, we would check the levels. That's why you have the earbuds. You do a little setup and a sound check and make sure that the levels are as close as you can get them, because you don't want to have to do that every time you switch speaking. One other thing that is absolutely critical if you're going to work in GarageBand, this would drive us nuts because we do the show every month.
Yeah.
And then it drove me nuts in the last couple of days trying to figure out it wouldn't work. I couldn't record anything. I couldn't remember why, because it's been a year since we did one of our podcasts. And you have to go, it's, I think, very non-intuitive, but it is under track. You have to go to configure track header. And this little button right here has to be clicked, record enable, has to have the little check mark beside it. And you can see the red button right here will show up, and then you can record things. If you don't have that enabled, you can't record. And what will happen is it will actually record a bit. It'll kind of pick up and you'll see the wave pattern will be like this the entire time, and there's virtually no volume. And so you have to have it enabled so that it will pick up the microphones, and that, honestly, it seems like a minute detail, but that caused me more headaches.
Oh yeah.
And finally somebody pointed it out, because it changed, and things do change the way that different software works sometimes. So I think that's about it. If we can, maybe, is there anything else on the last slide? I think Zara has our contact information. So if you ever do want to get in touch with us, we'd love you to follow the podcast, both Boxla Beat and The Musician Next Door, which will be Blackbird Sessions. And and where are we on the? We'll just
to be on
we got that up. Maybe I'll start sharing again.
Yeah. Oh,
there we go. There it is. Perfect.
Hey.
All right. Sorry, it just takes a little bit. I was impatient. That is my email address and Kerry's email address. Feel free to get in touch with us. Honestly, we'd be happy if you go and listen to them. We'd be happy to help anyone that we can help. If anyone has any questions, we don't have a lot of time left, but do you have anything else you want to add? I've been kind of controlling a bit too much.
No. Yeah, honestly, I mean, you had to talk a lot about that because you did that. I was learning as we went, but it wasn't something I was doing right away or anything. So no.
You're going to. I sent you one to practice
I know.
on. Kerry's going to become an expert GarageBand editor, or I don't know, maybe
we'll try the other one.
Audacity or Reaper.
Yeah. I'm going to learn the sound stuff like that. Really good.
I pick up the other things pretty quickly. So yeah, I'd like to thank Aisha for making this happen. I know she's staying in the background and she's doing a lot during the AudioCast Festival, but she did a lot to make this happen. She would bring that stuff to us. I'm on the board at PIP as well, and she would bring it to us, and we all had a role. Basically, our role is to say, Yes, Aisha, that's a fantastic idea. Thanks for figuring that all out, and thanks for making that all happen. And literally, that's about what our role was. But she has done all of this and made this all happen, and it's such a great educational experience for everybody. So thank you to her, to them.
And thank you, Aisha, for having me too. That was lovely.
Oh, no worries. Thanks to you guys for this this great session and for sharing all your knowledge and experience. It sounds like it's been a crazy journey and it's going to keep going.
Yeah, I definitely learned some stuff from you guys too. So thanks.
We weren't leaving you out, Tara. We were going to thank you next for coming on, being our moderator. It's been great to meet you and get to know you, and really appreciate everything you guys did to help us get ready for this and turn it into hopefully a little bit more accessible session than it was going to be. I was first planning it. So hey, there you are.
Well, that's what PIP's all about, right? Is accessibility. So definitely I know even when I was first starting out podcasting, this organization did so much and I've learned so much and I'm still learning, especially from this. So thank you so much for being awesome.
It's our pleasure. We're really excited to have been part of this.
Yes, thank you, Zara.
Yeah, no worries. Does anybody who's still here have any questions at all? Okay, I don't think so. So here.
Anything else you wanted to? Did we miss anything you'd like to hear in the last minute?
No, I think you guys covered it all. I was really interested to see GarageBand because I've never used that to edit audio, but it seemed actually pretty user friendly. So I was surprised by that.
Yeah, it's not too bad. And I didn't get into multi-tracks, but I mean, if you have multiple tracks, I mean, I'll set it's like anything else in that, right? I'll set a track for theme music, and that's just the theme music in that track. And then I'll have the track for the conversation, and drop it in. And literally, when you have an MP3 to drop, you just drop it in, and then away you go. So.
Right. And I'm sure if anybody here has any further questions for you guys, you can get contacted at stevenstamp@hotmail.com. And your Instagram is at Boxla Beat. And Kerry, for anyone who wants to contact Kerry, Jayne5M, that's M for Mary, at hotmail.com. And everyone can check out the podcast at the musician next door.peterboroughpodcasters.ca. So it's still under the old name.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we can change that or not. Aisha would know.
Yeah, you can change that.
Okay.
Okay.
To Blackbird Sessions.
Okay. Well, I think this was awesome. Yay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, have an amazing night, and we'll see you at future workshops.
Yeah, there's lots to listen to as part of the AudioCast Festival, so be part of it.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
All right, looks like it's just the three of us now.
Brilliant.
Hey.
That went really well. You guys did great.
Oh, how many people was there?
There were 4.
4 audience.
Hang on a sec. Sorry, Zara, we're still streaming on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
In the menu, there's a way to say stop.
There, stop recording. Sorry about that.
Okay.
No, sorry.